So welcome everyone to the Art of Ministry podcast. And my name is John. I'll be joined by the awesome Lochy, this is our first show as a team together. Lochy, how are you going today?
Not doing too badly at all.
Good. And we've got a very special guest today for the podcast. We're very privileged to have him here. He's a church pastor and also a talented puppeteer. These are one and the same person. Everyone, please welcome Stephen Urmston. And I'll edit in some cheering noises at some point.
Yeah.
How are you, Stephen?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. And one thing I wanted to say quickly, it was recently your birthday as well, wasn't it?
It was recently my birthday. Thank you so much. Time of recording, my birthday was last week. It's my final year in my 30s. Party on.
Oh, wow.
Yes, there you go.
I find the trick with turning 40 is you distract people as they, like most of what feels bad about turning 40 is people's reaction. So you need to distract them when you tell them how old you are, because normally what happens is you go, I'm turning 40, and they go, 40? So what you do is you kind of go, I'm turning 40. What's that? And then they sort of caught off guard and they're like, sorry, you said 40. And it doesn't feel as bad.
I'm going to take that, and next year, that's going to be my thing. That's going to be great.
Yeah.
Now that's really exciting. And I should mention as well, Lochy, this is your birthday is coming up as well.
Yes, tomorrow morning.
Which is very cool. Yeah.
So yes.
No, that's awesome. And I feel a bit left out. I was in March, so there you go.
Program. You should change your birthday, and then we can all celebrate together. That'd be
fun.
You delay. You pretend that there was something on, and and then it has to be postponed, and then you just steer it onto the same kind of period.
Yes. Yeah. Well, look. I feel like actually just thinking about it, I can already tell, Steve, you've done some podcasting before, haven't you? Because you already come across as someone who's already knows exactly what they're doing to me.
That's right. A little while ago, I had a podcast before podcasts were cool on the intersection kind of between, in some ways, Christianity and video games. So, that was a thing a little while ago, which was a bit of fun. But we ended that probably 7 years ago now. So, but we did well. We got a whole bunch of interview type people, and it was a great experience. Which is a bit
excellent. Fun. Yeah. Well, that sounds very good. What was the name of it? Was it
Sophisticated Gaming? We took ourselves pretty seriously. That was the whole thing. We didn't take ourselves very seriously, and.
Is it still available? I'd love to listen to some.
If you hunt for it, it might still be around. I think there's a Facebook page, but I'd have to work out if it's still listenable. But I might have a look.
Awesome. Well, one thing I should probably say at this juncture is just a little bit about the podcast, very, very briefly. This show is really all about art in all of its breadth, in all of its different media and expressions, and about Jesus. How do we share about Jesus using art and the arts and creativity? So Stephen was one of the people that I really, really wanted to get on, because what he does is so unique and so special, because it's something that is enthralling to young people and to adults as well. Even seeing recently at work people using the Muppets as an illustration for something was just so much fun, and knowing that kind of thing is still so powerful today as a medium, it was just really, really exciting to get Stephen here and to talk a little bit about it. So Stephen, I just want to start with the first question, which is how did you get into puppetry? How did you actually start working and doing puppetry?
Yeah, good question. So a lot of the way a lot of people get into creative type ministries, Beach Mission. So Beach Mission runs throughout the year. I can see a lot of nods. So there's various different ways to do Beach Mission, and a lot of different people who run various sorts of Beach Mission. But the one I was on, we essentially ran children's shows for about an hour And then we toured that show through various local caravan parks. So part of that show would be kids' games to start with. You'd get all the kids' attention, pretty standard beach mission stuff. You'd do some music with them. You'd do a memory verse from the Bible. These beach missions were teaching about Jesus and the Bible and why he was important. And then part of it, there would be a puppet theater, and someone would talk to the puppet, usually for a teaching point. And really, everyone just got a chance to try puppetry out. We were given about a 15-minute crash course back then into puppetry. And
that sounds like beach mission.
Yeah, exactly right. That's beach mission. That's how it works. It's like, here's the script. You look like someone who could give this a crack. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a while ago. I was a teenager. So yeah, when I first got to do that. So that was how I got into puppetry. And then I kept coming back to that year on year. So the next year they'd say, oh, you gave this you were okay about this last time. Do you want to give it another turn? I'm like, sure. Okay. And that kind of rolled on for a couple of years. So eventually that turned into a passion and started to buy my own puppets. And yeah, it kind of went on from there.
I'm curious. I wonder if at some point we should say a bit about what Beach Mission is. But one of the things that you've sort of touched on with Beach Mission is it does tend to be one of those things that lots of people will give things a try, and some people will carry on with it, and some people will just do it then and leave it alone. Puppetry is one of those really interesting areas where it's something that a lot of people will maybe give a go, and it's a lot of people will just kind of say, oh, can you have a go with the puppet? The minister might volunteer someone. But it does actually have quite a skill set to it. So there's quite a difference between just putting the puppet on and being good at puppetry and using puppetry well. I'm wondering, what would you say are sort of character traits and qualities that would make someone a good puppeteer?
Yeah, so you've got kind of two basic parts of puppetry. In some ways, mechanics and character.
Yeah,
both are equally needed. Some people will say some are needed more than others. So the puppetry purists would say, unless you're moving the mouth exactly in the right way, then people won't get it. Where other people will say, look, if you can nail the character, then people will forgive all the mechanics that are bad and that kind of stuff. And you may have seen people try to give puppetry a go, and they are hilarious. Their character is so funny and it's engaging. Now, could they move the mouth in time? Not a chance. But they were engaging. Yet other times you could see someone who so beautifully moved the puppet and its body language and just how it's kind of creating that sense of movement. And they didn't even say any words, but it was really enthralling. So kind of what are some character traits? Like most art forms, it's really practice. Either practice at a character or practice at a technique. At one point, you have to start at either area. Either you're comfortable kind of getting up, because puppetry is in front of people, like all art, and you need to do stuff confidently, or at least with an air of confidence. And then you want to practice on the actual skill set itself. So both are needed. A character, if you can engage people well, that tends to come from character more so than skill set, because people will point out skill set differences, but few people will say, look, I didn't really get the character. They'll either laugh or they'll just get bored. So you've got either a little bit of acting, kind of ad lib sometimes, or a good script, good words to say. So both are kind of needed. In regards to character, like all characters, things that are engaging create tension, but you've got to ride the tension wave. If you're just arguing the whole time, then that's not tension, that's just annoying. There's a difference there.
This is conflict.
But so if you can have a character that's engaging and relatable and fun and creates that little bit of, oh, what's going to happen, then I think that's probably a really good first step at whatever point. So yeah, that's probably one of the main ones.
I totally relate to what you say about the not just having arguments, because there are some of those soapies that that used to be on. It used to be almost like, how are you? Oh, what's that supposed to mean? And then it just becomes this whole debate about how they are. And I mean, it got to the point where conflict became overwhelming in the show, I think. So yeah, it's a very good point. You yes, there'll be some working things out, but it doesn't have to be an enormous argument that goes on and on. So yeah,
like all kind of storytelling, you've got to build the tension, you've got to create moments of release, build it, and then release it, and have a point of conclusion at various points. So how you do that side of thing is part of it as well.
So what kind of puppets do you generally use in your environment, really?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got a range of different puppets. Puppets can be anything. Anything that can create life can be a puppet. In my setting, I'm using hand puppets. There are two main kinds of hand puppets. If we understand the Muppets, this is the easiest way to explain them. You've got puppets like Kermit, in that they have a moving mouth and their arms are stuck to a rod, and the rod moves the hand, and the dominant hand controls the mouth. So that's what we call an arm rod puppet, usually performed by one person. They come in, Elmo is another really good example of that, where they don't have fingers, but they have a hand which moves, and they can be in shot and out of shot, but it's the arm rod that controls the hand. So you've got arm rod puppets, and then you've got live hand puppets. For this one, think of Cookie Monster.
Fozzie.
Yep. In a similar way. Also, Ralph. But anyway, you've got a hand controlling the mouth, and you've got a hand controlling fingers. So you're in a glove at that point. And at that point, you can actually pick things up and throw them, or pick things up and interact with them. Depending on how good the glove is, depends on how the finickiness of actually picking things up. So both of those puppets, so it's really moving mouth puppets with the dominant hand, and both arm rod and live hand puppets. They're the two main ones I'd use. I've dabbled in shadow puppets, but that's just not my thing. It's a whole different mechanic set, and it takes so much setup and lighting and properness. It's really hard work. But yeah, so mainly moving mouth with either arm rod or live hand. So both of those require two hands.
It is interesting with puppetry, and it's kind of funny watching people relate to a puppet and even use a puppet. And one of the things I've found is sometimes there's a lot of adults particularly that find just the idea of doing puppetry quite challenging, not the technical stuff so much. I mean, sometimes you get people who will do, and the thing I always laugh at is when people are first doing a puppet, and they do that thing where they close the mouth as the puppet speaks. Like it's sort of like, and when it's beautiful. It's got to be the opposite, yeah. But you get people who actually find it kind of confronting to be a character, to sort of take on an extra persona, especially when they are still visible. Like to have this extra person on there, it's something that a lot of adults will struggle to do. And why would you say that is?
Well, yeah, you've got and within that, I should say, so arm rod and live hands, there's two different ways you can perform them, and this will come to this question. One is obviously behind a screen. We either in a puppet theatre or behind some kind of screen, and Sesame Street, they've got their hand right above their head, and they're performing it that way. Or there's puppet theatres when you can stand actually physically in them with the puppet in front of your face through a one-way curtain, and you can do it that way. That kind of puppetry is much easier than ventriloquist style, where you are holding it and you are talking to the puppet yourself. That is extremely confronting. That takes practice, and you've really got to get out of your shell to do that one, because you are actually having a conversation with yourself whilst trying to convince people you're not trying to be a ventriloquist. So the trickiness about that one is basically embarrassment. If you're in front of people, the thing about ventriloquists is everyone knows how to spot a bad ventriloquist quite easily, in that you can see their mouth move or you can't. So as soon as someone comes out with a puppet on their hand, instead of watching the puppet, they'll watch you. So the basic trick of being a not ventriloquist, which is what I call myself, I'm not a ventriloquist, is you need to get people's attention to the puppet. Once you get people's attention to the puppet, they will forgive your face because their eyes are actually watching the character rather than watching you. And at that point, you've won. So teaching people to have a really clear character and think about their movement is the massive hurdle you've got to overcome, which is why adults don't tend to come out with the puppet on their hand, because they don't see that as puppetry, they see that as ventriloquism. And it's when personal expectations actually completely shift.
Yeah, actually, there's a one related question to that is, do you find that kids, in terms of that struggle where people have where they're seeing a puppet and they can see someone's operating it, do you find that kids are just as standoffish about that, or do you find that kids actually adopt the puppet really easily, like that they find the puppet, that they don't have a problem with relating to the puppet as though it's a living thing, you know?
Yeah. As long as the puppet is talking and it is different enough from the person, there's something that happens between the ages of 2 and 3 where all kids become okay with puppetry. Below 3 in a live setting, there's still the fantasy reality.
I'm not sure if this is real thing.
Yeah. What is this real? And kids can just get freaked out by something that is talking right up in their face, unless there's a distance between them, like a stage and an audience, that kind of thing. But if they're right up close, at that point, kids get it. It doesn't even matter if the puppet doesn't have legs. I've done that too. So you've actually got just a puppet which is body up, and they've got hands and they've got a face. But at that point, excuse me, the kids will more easily turn to the puppet and speak to it. The funny part is, though, nearly every single kid will come up to the puppet and go, "Hey, puppet, what's that? Bite my hand." Don't know why. It's just something that happens whenever they're close to it. It's fascinating. Every single time it's like, "Hey, puppet, what's that? Bite my hand." And if they do, the kids love it. And if they don't, like, it's like, "Oh no, I've got something in my mouth, it's fur," or something like that.
Yeah.
Then we can
kind of work. Or you make it think about it. You taste them and then go, out.
Yeah, exactly right. What did you have for breakfast? And why does it taste like feet? Or something like that. You can kind of make it work. But in that moment, why do kind of kids accept puppets? Well, I think kids, they live in an imaginary world, and they're ready to accept things quicker than adults are. Where adults, you've still got to go with that. Yeah, but I know it's not real. You know, like, I know you're doing it. When kids will kind of go, "You're funny," and that's it. Or "You're talking," and that's it.
Yeah.
And why is the green crocodile speaking to me? What's your name? And like, they'll go straight there.
Yeah.
When adults will just take that little bit of extra moment to go, "Okay, I'm ready to play along now." And that's still interesting. I've had some times when I've done puppetry in an adult setting, just as a bit of a gag to say, "Hey, look, this is what we're going to do this week. And I want to show you a puppet because that's what I do. And what we're going to do, we're going to ask the puppet a question. And I'll set up one person to ask the puppet a question, and I'll just do whatever it comes out, ad lib. I'm kind of comfortable in that setting." And then the questions start to come, and they're actually talking to the puppet in that moment. Now, obviously, I'm standing next to the puppet. They know it's me. But in that moment, for those few minutes, everyone's having a bit of fun and actually waiting to see what the puppet will say. And that's a bit of fun. So you can get adults there. Ventriloquism is a thing. You've just got to be very good. But when you come up the front with a ventriloquist, then adults tend to watch you rather than watching the puppet, where the kids will more easily watch the puppet.
Yeah.
Fascinating. And at this point, I just wanted to really look into, I guess, thinking back to that Scripture Union experience, but also looking at your current church experience. How do you use puppets to share the gospel and talk about Jesus in either a Sunday school setting or a wider church setting or an event setting? what are some ways that you find are really helpful ways of putting the message of Jesus across?
Yeah, absolutely. And what puppets do is they create conversation. Obviously, if the best way to explain something is actually verbally, like there's plenty of different ways we can explain things. We can use a teaching segment and hold up a box and what's in the box. And today we're going to find out what's in the box. And you can pull things out of the box and go, okay, well, this is a very special box for whatever reason. You can show things through storytelling and share the story yourself. But if something is best, if something starts as misunderstood and then moves through a conversation, and that's the best way to answer questions that naturally come up, then that's when a puppet is gold. So the times I've used puppets a couple of times in my current setting is what some churches call a kids talk, is what one spot. So where I'll stand up and I'll explain something quickly, and the puppet will kind of go, "No, you don't mean that seriously, do you?" Oh, and that'll give me a chance to go, "Well, yeah, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about how Jesus is powerful." Yeah, but I know things that are powerful. That's not that impressive, is it? Well, actually, the fact that Jesus is powerful actually shows us a whole bunch of things. And the puppet can go, "Like what?" And you can go, "Well." So when there's points of questions, there's plenty of times in sermons where when the preacher is trying to work out a way to pull together a number of different thought lines, and they're using one and they're connecting one thought to another thought to another thought, where the puppet can go. So best in outreach, I feel, where when you say a statement and the puppet can jump in there and say, "Yeah, but I don't believe you." And you go, "Oh, okay, yeah, why not?" Puppet goes, "Well, because I had an experience when, and you can't say this because." They answer questions in an abrupt fashion. Normally, you got to do it well, but in an abrupt fashion that actually connects thoughts together, where the preacher might stand up and explain something and then go, "You may have heard it said," or they'll connect their thoughts to the next one. Okay, now I'm going to tell you a story. Or you may have thought this before. Or, you might be thinking, "What about this?" What the puppet does is you present the idea, and then the puppet just goes straight to the question. "Okay, no, but I've been thinking about this, and you're wrong. Why am I wrong?" Well, because this is what happens in real life. You can't say that without saying this. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah.
That's when the use of puppetry, the use of conversation, the gospel can come out, because you can answer questions that you really hope, with good planning, that the kids in the audience or the adults in the audience are thinking. And then you can kind of tick them off as you go through your talk. So you're not just presenting an idea, but then you're presenting questions that, through the right research, preparation, all that kind of stuff, that people in the audience are asking, and you actually kind of go, here's my thought, and here's the things I want you to be thinking about. And it actually creates this great conversation afterwards as well, because you can see that we're not afraid of questions, and you can see we've actually thought through thoughtful responses. Like, these aren't trite answers. If kids say, "Yeah, but no one saw Jesus come back to life," surely people don't believe that. You can go, "But people did." You go, "What do you mean?" And then you can go down that line. So that's where kind of puppetry and gospel really intersects at its strength.
Well, actually, what you were just saying touches really nicely on one of the questions I had, and in some ways answers it already, but I wonder if there's more to it. That I've always been interested by the way people use puppets in different scenarios. So one of the very standard ways I see the puppet is as the foil, in terms of the puppet asks the dumb question. So the puppet is the everyman who understands less than anyone else in the room, and will ask all the dumb questions and kind of say, but how could Jesus possibly do that, or something like that. So it basically gives an opportunity for the person who's running it to give those questions, and it's all done on a very, this puppet is an idiot.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It sounds like you've almost got an additional layer that you'll add to that you will have. You'll get the puppet to ask far more intelligent questions because you'll get the puppet to do that, play the devil's advocate, basically.
Yes,
to kind of say, this is the question that I would like a smart listener to be asking. So I'm going to throw that into the mix. So people are going, yeah. How do you answer that one?
Yeah, exactly. Because if there's a question you don't want people to ask, I think that question needs to be answered. So
that's a problem, isn't it?
It's more than, okay, well, Jesus fed 5,000 people. How did he do that with so little food? Well, he did a miracle. Wow, that's amazing. Well, that's boring. It's like, that's just at that point, the puppet's actually not done anything. You could do the exactly same point. You just tell people, Jesus fed 5,000 people. He did it, and it was a miracle. It was amazing. It's pretty much the same way as a puppet going, how did he do that? Well, he fed 5,000 people.
Yeah.
Really? It was a miracle. That's amazing. Like, there's actually no difference between those two, and just adding a puppet into that with boring questions, even though they're good questions because they actually help the story come along. What really helps is when a combination between, yes, just asking questions to help them move the story along, and the puppet is not on your side. That is a fun moment, because there's a few classic Muppets, sorry, not Muppet, Sesame Street, where you see various characters just arguing with each other, and it's just an absolute hoot to watch.
Yeah,
because you're just rolling around the place going, he's an idiot, he gets it, he doesn't get it, but it's just so well written. It's this moment of just utter joy because you're going, how did you not get it? And you just go, no, these people are brilliant. So when you can create that devil's advocate moment, that's when the strength of the puppet and the strength of the conversation really comes to play. And even by the end of it, if the puppet isn't convinced, that's a good place to be, in that if they're still inquiring, that's actually really great.
Yeah, so you haven't won them over. It hasn't gone all your way.
No, because that's how, if you think about it, that's how conversations work. At the end of a conversation, someone doesn't, maybe in the olden days, but now it's a case of, you know what, I hear what you've said, and I'm going to have to go away and think about it, and I'm going to come back to you with more questions. That's really where I want.
They're going to be hard questions.
They're going to be hard questions. That's where I want the kind of the puppet to land, and by the end of it. So the puppet can be silly and can be a little bit distracting, as long as you've got ways for the upfront. That's my code for the person speaking to the puppet. The upfront to actually talk to the puppet, and kind of go, look, I see where you're going, but can we just hold that thought for a moment? A good script is really well thought out. A funny script can be very ad lib, but that's because people can just tell it's gone. They're just going along with the motions, and that's the funny part, rather than the conversation being really well crafted. So
but you can see it in the face of the guest.
Comes back to one of our early questions about character versus mechanics, and if people's mechanics are on point, but their character is just not. Okay, thank you for telling me this thing, and now I'm going to thank you. Okay, what is next? It's just like people are like, your puppetry was good, your character was boring. If the character is going, no. What do you mean? What do you like? You presented something, and people are just going, okay, I hear what you've done, and the puppet goes, actually, no. And people tend to kind of go, hang on, what's about to happen here? Because the puppet can say, you're actually not making any sense, because in the real world, that's not how it works. And at that moment, people go, the puppet's got a point, mister. And this is the foil. So you want it to be believable foil, and it's not like, what do you call it, intelligent foil or not, but you actually want it to be, relatable.
Yeah.
And that's the key. It's relatable when there is enough pushback, and the pushback continues to grow and grow to a point where the puppet either yells at top of his voice kind of thing, but that's not fair, or something big, where the puppet, and everyone just kind of goes, yes, that's the point. And that's when you can bring in the reassurance of the gospel, your main point. Things of actually kind of going, but this is where Jesus helps. And the puppet's in a fluster because he's going, what do you mean? Because I need a release valve now. And that's the point when the puppet backs off and is actually physically breathing. But then the person is going, let me reassure you of the hope you can have, or the love you can know, or the depths that Jesus went to save you. And at this point, the puppet is going, oh my goodness, I think I get it.
I see where you're going.
Yeah. And that's it's the art of conversation. So
an interesting follow-up question. Both of those, like I really love that idea of having the puppet ask the much more hard questions and not always agree. But both of those are the puppet playing the audience. Both of those are the puppets are effectively taking on the role of the person who is across the table from the speaker, asking those questions. Do you ever go against that? Do you use the puppets in other ways, or is that where you find they work best?
The other way I've done it, I've flipped it on its head. Essentially the question is, can the person of authority be the puppet? Because at some point you need to have the person going, so someone saying, okay, hang on, stop. No, I want to tell you something serious. And in that moment, I want the serious talk to come from the human. And actually kind of someone who is saying, I'm real. He's not. We all know he's like a cartoon character. He can speak truth, but he isn't truth. I can speak truth. I am truth. The times I've flipped it on its head, and the times I've been in groups where they flipped it on its head, is where the puppet one example is the puppet takes over, but that has the person playing along with the puppet. So the puppet will be telling them what to do, and they might be acting out a silly story, and they can create moments of storytelling because the person is underacting, overacting, they're acting. But the puppet is the one in control. So that's one version of flipping it on its head. One of my favorite memories, one of my early ones, when I realized I had people, was when I did a late night talk show, made up late night talk show, but the host was the puppet. That was fun. So and then what the vehicle that gave me was, I said I've the puppets. The puppet was just having a bit of fun. It's kind of a Jimmy Fallon kind of character, if you know Jimmy Fallon, James Corden, one of those kind of sort of fun. But they then invited people onto the show. The people who were invited onto the show were biblical characters, and they told their story. So at that point, the puppet wasn't an idiot, but they were still an inquirer. But they kept the conversation going. And still then the person of authority in that moment was kind of the puppet, but the puppet was saying what happened next and letting them
They weren't the expert, they were the authority.
Exactly right. So
how did that go? How did that go? Because that's fascinating. That's a very different way of doing things. How
it was a lot of fun. So on one, I've done it I've done that mechanic a number of times just because it writes itself, for one. So it's a little bit easier to write. So one time it was a Christmas one, and the puppet had, it's time for Puppet's name tonight, and we're going to have some fun. We're going to sing we're going to do some music. We're going to have some guests. So it just worked really well for a carols event. To have the puppet as the MC of the entire night.
Wow.
Which worked, which was an absolute treat. I also co-hosted with a human. But instead of two people kind of bouncing off and people kind of going, oh yeah, oh yeah. One of them was a puppet. And then that seamlessly flowed into the puppet interviewing Mary and Joseph post the birth. So they brought out their baby and they said, we've got a sensational story. We're going to tell you this story that we're going to tell it from our view. So then it was fun writing a storyteller's perspective, Mary and Joseph's perspective of them telling the story. And they got to tell it how the shepherds came, and that was crazy. And how I think I did it as Mary and Joseph together. And then I did it as the shepherds together. There you go. That's right. So the shepherds told how they saw, and then how they met Mary and Joseph. And so that was really fun. The other one I did was various people from looking at the book of Judges and telling the story of Gideon.
Ah, yes.
And so Gideon came in, various soldiers came in, soldiers who kept getting sent home, if you know the story. Fewer and fewer people were used, and they were just confused. So they'd done all this training, and they were confused about why they were getting sent home, because they had to lick the river like a dog, and they gave that a crack, and they then got sent home, even though their
apparently they failed.
So it was a chance to kind of go, what was going on? And I could say Gideon said God would look after us. God is in control. And then I had one from after the event, which, so it's just a different way of telling a story. And then this is where script writing, character, and mechanics kind of all come together. Puppetry is not, it is fun to do it ad lib, but it's best done when it's really well written and then really well rehearsed, like all good art. So that's all this to say that that's when you kind of flip around the puppet being not just the idiot or the arguer, to be someone to be convinced. No, sometimes they are there to actually be the vehicle to tell the story. So that works as well.
And one thing I have found is it doesn't work so well if you try and mix that up and try and get the puppet to be the person who knows and the foil. That kind of gets very confused. I've seen that.
And so I've seen some people try to do it with two puppets, and one of the puppet is being the authority, and one of them is not. And it works, but it's, for some reason, it's easy to check out of. I think it's because you're watching. It's like you're watching a cartoon, and you're like, okay, this is one person speaking truth. Is one cartoon character speaking truth to another cartoon character, and you feel like you just want to kind of fast forward to the good bits.
It feels like the moral bit in Sesame Street.
So it works well. It's why Sesame Street has worked for thousands and thousands of episodes. I think because you've got people interacting with characters. And there's that basic formula of conversation and what are you doing and how has that gone wrong? Whereas in Sesame Street, you'll always see how the people, silly things happen to the people, but they're always people. And they're always there to help. And they're the ones who guide, and they're the ones who teach. The other time, like Elmo's there as the loving character for all eternity, and the other ones are there to help out in various points, but still the puppets tend to be the ones learning along the way, and they continue to learn. They always continue to experience, and they come to a conclusion. And it's like, yay, we did this together. And the adults encouraging the puppets, yes, you did, well done. So it's, the puppets are kind of always the children. In comedy acts, they're the ones to be convinced, or they're the ones messing with the story, where the ventriloquist is still the one holding it all together. In various points, that's where the comedy comes from. So it doesn't seem to work that way.
Isn't that expression, don't work with children and animals or something, or is that right? I don't know if that, in my experience, some of the plays I've seen, the children have been fantastic. They've been really good actors. Yeah. I haven't seen any with a dog yet, or an animal yet, but I'm sure that will come with time. But
I had a dog puppet once.
Oh, there you go. That's even better. That's great.
I don't think I've got. I've had dog puppets, but I don't think I own a dog puppet. I've got a lot. Lots of animals. Hot tip: animals are better puppets than people puppets.
Okay.
But it's because people puppets, there's more mechanics you have to be aware of. Where animals, they can talk. You know how animals don't talk, and you can get away with other things. But yeah, people do talk. So there's ways you have to do it differently.
Now, you've mentioned quite a lot of different contexts in when you've used puppetry. I was fascinated to hear that event where the puppet more or less was part of leading the proceedings, because that's a beautiful way of engaging, younger people, but also adults have this perhaps sometimes unspoken appreciation of that level of presentation. Is there a context where you feel that puppetry really, I suppose, comes into its own, or do you feel that they're all very good? There's just different strengths. So Sunday school, there might be a strength in being close to people and people being able to hear things really well and see things really well. Whereas an event, it might be that you can use some different mechanics involving a whole crowd of people. Is there always different approaches to the different contexts when you're using puppets in ministry?
Yeah, look, you want to think about what you're trying to achieve. Like it's always a good question to ask with any kind of art form. As you think about puppetry, if you're not holding it yourself, then you're confined to a space. That is tricky. So, and that space tends to be no more than about 1.5 meters, and it's as far as you can reach. But also hold said cotton thing up for as long as you can, which gets really tiring. So you've got to think about kind of arms and that kind of stuff. So because it's a physical ministry, there's various ways you have to look after yourself, much like dance and drama and singing and all those kinds of things, because they're all physical. There's so, and as you have a bigger, wider stage, your puppet from further away obviously becomes smaller and smaller and smaller. So then you've got to think about your actions and how clear your actions are being and what you're trying to portray in those moments. So it just depends what you're trying to achieve. Anything that is, to come back to, anything that is worked out best by conversation can work no matter the audience. As long as they can see and hear, then for the most part, it'll work. TV screens can help, that kind of thing. The biggest crowd I've had was a carols event with about somewhere between 8,000 and 10,000 people. It still worked. But the hardest thing about a carols outdoor event is that people check out of what's on stage anyway. Rather, if you go to an enclosed theatre, then people's attention is drawn to you, and they are opting into the show. So, in a church, in the states where they have religious education in schools, for the most part, you have the kids' attention for a short amount of time. So you use methods to keep their attention, and sometimes a way to keep their attention is a quick conversation. So that works in that setting because it can be very intimate in that you're close to your audience, to use that language, and they can ask direct questions directly to the puppet. You can't do that in a big group. You can't really even do that in a church setting unless you're very confident where you want the conversation to go. So there's just different things you're trying to achieve. If you're looking for a sense of conversation back from your conversational audience, that only works to a particular size and for a particular amount of time. Whereas big events, you want to use more physicality. You probably want to move the puppet around from location to location like a ninja. You've got to sneak out the back and sneak somewhere else, and you can't just walk out because that'll change the magic of the show. There's just different things you want to do. So as you think about different locations, it's kind of what actually are you trying to achieve? Because in some cases, nearly all cases, less is more. But if you want big stage, big audience, big carols event, then you're going to want to think about when are the people actually opting in to listen. or are they continuing to eat their cheese, wine, and crackers? It's a tricky one.
It's interesting. One that you sort of touched on before, and I find it fascinating that so many times the things we're sort of thinking, oh, we should talk about this, just has been coming up naturally. But one that you touched on was the idea of how you script. And I was wondering, how do you go about to what depth you script? Do you have everything is done word for word, and this is up on the puppet stage in front of me, and we are following this exactly? Or do you go dot points, or do you go, I've got the script, but I'm going off script? And does it change who you're working with? Because sometimes I'll find when you get people there's a duo that have been doing puppets at your church for 10 years, they don't even bother scripting anymore. But then you get, if a guest comes in, they're going to be terrified if you don't have a script. And how do you go about, to what extent you script your stuff?
Yeah, and it depends. It depends on the level of your intentionality with the message. If you want really intentional, big idea, clarity, something to be remembered rather than that was just a lot of fun, but I have no idea what just happened there. Then scripting it well, rehearsing it well, and actually keeping it so well written that it looks like things have happened, then that's actually gold. When you can practice natural conversation, that's an absolute win. In that case, I go word for word, well rehearsed, well written, but that's got to be well rehearsed, because otherwise, if you're going word for word, someone's holding up the script, someone's reading it, and there is nothing about that. It sounds read. If you've got people who can bounce off each other, then what you need is some kind of plan, how you're going to get from point to point. If your intentionality of your words is really high in that setting still, then you want to say, we need to get from point A to point B, and we need to pause at point B for a moment. How we get there, we don't mind. As long as it's not so distracting that it takes away from the intention of the message, then that's okay. But if you want to get from point A to point B and then to point C and then land it well, few people can do that in a good setting and actually have the kids kind of go, okay, well, what was the point of that? And the kids put up their hand and go, we remember that Jesus came back to life. We remember that Jesus is alive. That's the point. Not, it was really funny when the snot on the handkerchief kind of danced across the front of it and then fell off the end. What were you talking about? That Jesus came back to life. Okay, something's happened here. I think a lot of fun has happened here. But if we're going for the intentional message, then I'm someone who would err on the side of, I've written this for a reason, and I've written this well. So I've put time into writing. We're going to put time into practicing, so that when we do it, people go, well done, because I know what you said. I know how you got there, and that's great. So that's because of the job I'm in, because I'm a pastor, I want people to remember. So that's my natural inclination. I've done most of the other ones. So yeah.
So it sounds like there's almost a rule of thumb there of you write and rehearse to the extent that you want them to remember what you say.
Yeah, exactly. So because we want it, the best puppetry looks like it's not scripted. To have something look like it's not scripted takes a lot of work. Or to have a natural conversation. Even if it's someone who is comfortable reading and can read with expression in a way that they're going, hey, yeah, this happened, and then what's going to go in there, and to have someone, a puppet, kind of jump in with the next line or whatever, that just takes at least some form of practice for it to look like there's no script.
Do you ever do the cheeky improv just to see the guest's face as they start to panic?
So I do what I call safe improv. So I will rarely put people into situations where they go, I don't know where we are.
I don't know what to do now.
I don't know what to do now. So I will tell them to say something else, and I tell them the puppet is going to say something there.
Yeah.
I don't know what the puppet's going to say, but
Here's where we're
whatever
going
they
to land.
do say your next line. And in that moment, that can be a bit of fun because it's very well boundaried, improv for a purpose, for a gag normally. But as you're talking, the really good puppeteers will actually add stuff in.
Yeah.
But they're not. It's not extra lines. It's expression of understanding. So it's the puppet going, "Oh, really? Wow. Okay. Huh? Oh, ooh," like all those kind of little sounds that people make. And if you get someone who's not used to that, then that's a bit funny because it's like, what are you saying? No, I'm listening.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Go on.
Yeah, exactly. With your next line now. Yeah, if you have to, unless it's part of the gag to actually mention the show behind the show, then it's best for it to keep going as seamlessly as possible. And the only way for that to happen, like in all art, is to be well prepared.
And not throw your guests.
And not throw your guests. Yeah.
No, that's
yeah. So like if I'm interviewing someone as a puppet, I'll keep it fairly safe. So they are answering the questions they are responsible for, rather than so if we have someone who's been sharing about Jesus in another country, and the puppet wants to interview them, that's great. But I will only put them in ad lib water if it's about what they are on about. What was that like? Or hang on, what happened in that story? We didn't talk about that. Okay, everyone. Now I'm just really, and the puppet will actually go along with it. I'm just really curious in this. You mentioned the ball disappeared. Where did the ball go?
Yeah.
And then they will actually laugh, and they will be able to be in that moment. So
so you feed them something they can roll with.
Exactly, because it's their experience, their story. But I won't then say, okay, now ask me something, unless they've actually thought of it. In that moment where they have to think dramatically on their feet, which is a whole different skill set, then I never like to throw the guess. I like it to be intentional, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. That's so much to take in about that. Just thinking about, I never thought. I mean, I knew that there was a lot to think about from a dramatic angle, but some of the things that you've talked about, I totally didn't expect, and it just gives me a new respect for all the machinations going on in the background. Just to quickly touch on something that you mentioned earlier about, I'm imagining you'd be pretty good in an arm wrestling contest. You probably take it out, if you need to have strength to do.
When I'm doing a lot of puppetry, I'm good in an arm wrestling contest.
Yeah.
I have misshaped arms in that.
Yeah.
My dominant arm tends to be stronger when I'm on my puppetry A game. So being a pastor at the moment, there's lots of things I'm doing outside of puppetry. But when I've got my puppetry doing on, then one arm is quite literally stronger than the other.
Yes.
And yes, that is a thing that happens. That
so
is not.
Is the puppets that you use most commonly, are they heavy, or do you use lighter ones at the moment more commonly?
Both, and some puppets are just naturally heavier than others if they've got a lot of head foam, or they've been made kind of head heavy, so to speak. Then that's quite literally something. If the puppet has a formed body, that's just more weight. There's a classic, what's called a sack puppet, which has got basically a formed head, and then the body is like the shape of a sack that goes to an arm, and that arm is as light as a feather because it's just the material. But then you're wrestling with the weight of the head, and that's something you've got to hold up for a time. You'll see a lot of puppet acts go down after 5 minutes. There's a good reason for that, because it's really hard to hold up something really light with one hand at a close to a 90-degree angle for the whole time, because it just, if you've ever tried it, it progressively gets heavier.
Oh yeah, that's what I do when I'm studying, Stephen. I'm always holding my head up to try and.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I must read those facts before tomorrow.
Feel for the person who's controlling your mouth as you do that as well. So,
The puppet we used to have, the animal puppet I mentioned before, was wonderful because it was a Scotty dog. And you basically, he had like a body and a head, and you basically crossed your arm over and then put your head up through, and he sat on your arm, and basically you were resting crossed-armed, and you could go all day.
So there's some ways where theatres can help in that respect. You can rest your elbow, you can rest your arm on it. Some people build arm rests into their theatres, or they do it in a way where you can rest your arm. Just as soon as you do that, you limit mobility completely, because you can't, because the weight of your arm is actually resting on something, and if that's what's holding your hand up, then you can't move that. So the puppet can't actually physically move left and right anymore, because you've locked into something that's actually holding your hand up. So that's the physicality that comes into it, and that's tricky. There are lighter puppets than others, which are an absolute dream to operate. If you're going to do puppetry over time, then upper body strength is just something you need.
Do you have a puppet that's a monster to use but is worth the payoff?
Yes. So I've got one which has to be held quite high. And that's great. I've got another one which is my kind of fallback puppet, where he's so light I can pull him out as often as I need, because it's a no-brainer. The character has lived in my head for about 20 years, so that one's kind of really easy to do. And he's so light that I can hold him, and I can hold my arm, and I can do that in basically a ventriloquist style whilst not being a ventriloquist, as I said. There's other ones which I've got, and they've got blinking mechanisms in there, so you can add more expression to the puppet. And that just adds weight. So that's awesome. That's just more weight. So yes.
And that's another layer of
expression. Comes back to the intentionality question.
Yeah, that's another layer of expression as well, because you can do slow blinks to people and things like that. Slow blinks.
So. You can do shock face. This is me moving my fingers in the same way.
Flirting.
You can have, as you can do this great kind of slow turn with their eyes wide open, and you do that with a bit of a shake, and that's really, really fun. You can do sleepy with that one as well, and you can do kind of robot blinking, like that slow blink, and that's kind of a bit of comic relief, which is a bit of fun. So look, it's all expression, and expression is both like all those communication things we've done over the years, both body and face, and the last part is words. All that still exists. Body language still exists with puppetry, and all the same rules apply. So how you move the puppet's head, how you move its body, how you move its hands communicates as much as the words it says. So that's all part of it.
I had a question which in some ways you already answered, so I'm going to ditch it. We were talking about, do you use puppets more specifically for kids, or do you use them for adults sometimes? And you sort of talked about using that. But I suppose one question I did have is, who are your influences? Like, who are the puppets and the puppeteers and the puppet outfits that you look at and you kind of go, that's awesome, I find that inspiring? And not just in the sense of who do you look up to, but who are the people that you've looked at and seen what they're doing and going, oh, that's good.
It happens every now and again as I watch. So obviously you've got the entire Muppet cast. And when you've got an appreciation for it, you can watch how they're doing it, and people kind of go, how are they doing that? And you can go, okay, there's a person there, there's a person there. There's probably someone on a skateboard underneath all of that, and they're making that work. So for me, there's been friends who have taught me how to do characters, who I still look up to. There's friends who have gone on to do massive type event puppets, kind of your Lion King style out in festivals. So that's a thing. But then there's also, you just see conversations and how characters react and people and that kind of stuff. So there's another podcast called Under the Puppet, which actually interviews people who have been in the puppetry game for a very long time. And that's the likes of Matt Vogel, who is Kermit, but then many other types as well. So a lot of people that go on that show. I respect a lot of people who can make puppets. I can't make puppets. I buy them, so it's a very expensive hobby. And now the puppets I buy are now very expensive. But at the same time, so there's plenty of different people I look up to. But now YouTube is a wonderful place, and I kind of just watch that and watch how people do puppets and do kids shows, really. And I've appreciated some of the musicals that have come out in the last 10 or 15 years with puppets in it, and watch those. But yeah, it's kind of varied because it's watching both for character and skill set, and then how they're pulling it together. So it's not there's a few people, but they're just names. But at the same time, it's just watching how people do actually perform with what they have. So various people.
Some of those artistry things that you only pick up on, when you're watching closely. So with Henson, I always find the thing I love with Henson is the emotional notes that they touch.
Absolutely.
Like they've been doing that so long, but they make you feel things from puppets.
Yeah. And you can watch. I love watching. So when you look at someone like Kermit, his actions are so intentional that they're tied to his character. So it's like the way he moves, his lip sync. So the way you move your hand to make the lips move, his lip sync is purposefully done all over the place. Because he's a bit of a manic personality. He's controlling and all this kind of stuff, but at the same time, he's kind of free and he just kind of lets go. So he actually over Matt Vogel and some of the others who do Kermit do too much mouth. His mouth moves too much for his words. When you get someone flip it the other way, like Miss Piggy, who mouths so precisely, her physicality is tied to her character. So you watch some of those nuances that happen, and that's fun to watch. That's really fun.
Yeah. If there was anyone who was thinking into getting into this this world, what would be something that they could work on, and what's something that they could aim towards? Where do they go? Where do they start?
Yeah, I think one of the places you want to start with is basically telling a story. So if you can find a Bible story that you really want to tell, work out how you want to tell it. That's the first part. So before you even think about character or puppetry or that kind of stuff, you got to think about what do you want people to know really first. So find a story you know probably well. Even better, do it with the Bible open. So you've actually got the Bible there, so you can see it. You can go through it and talk about it. Work out where the high points are, the low points, all this kind of stuff, and then write that out. At that point, you've kind of written out your story. Then you want to work out what will a puppet add to this? How can a puppet highlight, add to, look at details? How can a puppet is at best a highlighter in various ways, questioning, arguing, just saying that's weird. Yes, it is. That's very weird, and you can point things out. So one, kind of know your story. If you start with your character first and then you go to the story, then you'll tend to kind of think character first and then what story matches this character, when really, and that's the biggest temptation. That's because that's starting with the fun. If you want to start with puppetry, don't start with the fun. Really, start with what you're trying to start with, and that's the story. If you just want to work on puppetry as a skill set, then
the craft
itself. The one thing you don't want to start with first is the voice. Leave that till the end, because the first time you get up in front of people, the voice will change. I can guarantee it, that they'll put on a fun, whatever they think is a funny voice, and then they'll realize there's a script in front of them that they probably haven't prepared for. No offense, imaginary person, but they probably haven't prepared for the script. They've suddenly got a puppet
I'm
on their
judging your
hand.
imaginary person.
Yeah, I've never met this person. I probably haven't been. I've done them all. So there's a script there. You've suddenly got a puppet on your hand. You're realizing you're reading, you're moving, and you're speaking at the same time. And at that point, the one thing that will change that you won't think about is your voice. So,
you don't have enough brain power left for a Scottish accent.
You got nothing left because you realize that you're focusing in multiple different things at the same time, and you want it to be engaging. So in that moment, don't start with the voice. Actually, start with your hand movements. Beat out, or with singing. It's another way to do it. Just actually making your thumb move down. Lochy, we talked about this earlier, that everyone does it the wrong way around. They do it with their hand moving up. You want to do it with your thumb moving down at each syllable. And that's just, for one, that's just a mind bender, because for some reason we naturally think with our thumb moving up. And people naturally start doing puppetry moving up rather than moving down.
Yeah,
it's a very basic thing that you've got to get your head around.
Yeah, our instinct is to close the mouth on each word, where actually you're opening the mouth on each word.
Yeah, exactly right. And you're using the wrong. Well, when we start off with puppetry, we're always using our top hand rather than our bottom thumb.
Yeah.
When the puppet goes in, and you use the analogy of an actual human face. What moves when we talk? That would be our jaw, not the rest of our whole head. So things like, if you want to start out in puppetry, know what you want to say first. It's counterintuitive to kind of go, hang on, but I want to use a puppet. Okay, but why do you want to use a puppet? And that's really kind of the question. Kind of, will a puppet add to this well for what I'm trying to do? And if the answer is yes at that point, because you kind of go, no, because the puppet could ask this, and this, and then it's excellent. Use a puppet because that'll add. So at that point, you've got your story because you've recognized what the puppet can actually ask, and then at that moment, you've pretty much started writing the script, because you know the points where the puppet is actually going to say the puppet needs to ask this, and this, and to get to those points, we need to build something of the puppet so it can actually ask that, and that in a point that's relatable. Once you've done that, it's then time to pick up the puppet, because once you know the story that you're trying to say, and you've thought about how the character will add to it, and at that point, some of my friends would say, really work on the character to make sure the character's strong, and then get to the technique. It can go backwards and forwards. But if the character's lame, the puppet's also lame. So then you've got a lame show. Anyway, character has to be in there somewhere. If I'm doing my puppet training, I always teach character before I teach technique. So there's reasons for that. Otherwise, it's just boring from the get-go. But then, if you want to do puppetry, make sure you're nailing thumb movement for every syllable. If you can't see the video, my thumb is moving down for every syllable. That's why I was speaking a bit mechanically for a second there. An easy way to practice is with singing, because we naturally do that when we sing. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Like, it's just easier to beat out the syllables because that's what we do. So start with the story. Think about how the puppet will interact. So that's kind of theory. A theory in that it's we want to know what we want to say. Theory point 2, we know how the puppet will react at various levels. We've actually recognized that a puppet will add engagement into this story. 3, actually work out how to use the puppet. The easiest way to see your own technique is the hardest way to see your own technique, and that's to record it or have a very dear friend give you feedback.
Very honest friend.
Very honest friend who may not be a friend after that, but no. Who knows? Who can say, if you can line them up with, was the puppet's mouth actually moving as the puppet spoke? Was the puppet actually standing in a way that didn't look like a robot? Were they actually moving in a way that was believable? Did they enter into the scene not necessarily up the escalator or out of the escalator because that's funny, but did they actually come in a way where they could actually have the conversation flow and that kind of stuff? Did they just pop in? That's fine if that's part of their character. If you're going for an elderly character and the puppet just pops in, that's going to be against the character, because that character is going to want to move. Kind of all things stereotypes, slowly, but intentionally. And they know how they want to move, and they know what they want to say. So, and at that point, once you've worked out the mechanics, you then want to think about the voice. And then the best place to practice voices is somewhere where no one can hear you, usually a car, because it just looks like you're singing in the car and no one can tell if you're actually speaking to yourself or not. So it's a very good.
Put a Bluetooth earphone in.
Yeah. Just put some headphones on, or just put one earphone in if you've got wireless earbuds, and then so you can hear yourself. And then what you want to do with voices, it doesn't have to be a crazy voice. It just needs to be intelligible, in that you need to be able to understand it. So normally what people do when they pick up a puppet is they go either super high or crazy fast.
Yeah.
And the two things we don't want people to be is super high or crazy fast, because it's really hard to do any kind of intonation really high. And if they're speaking too fast, you're not going to understand what they're saying anyway. So record yourself. And then when you say, but that's not how I sound, it is how you sound, because it's a recording. Just how you sound with your own ears is different to how you sound through a speaker. And guess what? Yes, that is how you sound. So you want to actually record yourself or have someone listen to you and do it that way. So
we don't get all that extra bass that's happening in your head.
No, exactly right. And even if you kind of go and listen and open up your ears inside your head and hear that, you've still got this thing called a skull, which is and your brain, and you've got which actually affects the way you hear everything. Because when you're naturally hearing your own voice, you're hearing it internally and externally at the same time. So that's the trippy part of that. But yeah, there's lots of things you can say at this point, kind of how to get into puppetry, like all art forms. And I've said a couple of times now, practice in front of a video camera, practice in front of friends, actually see yourself do it. Look at how a puppet comes into the scene and exits a scene. Look at people like Quizworks. I used to work for Quizworks. They're a puppet theatre company. They travel around Australia, sharing the good news of Jesus with kids with puppets. And they're excellent at it. They're great trainers.
They're doing some very awesome stuff over lockdown at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was part of my job a couple of years ago, doing a lot of that stuff. And so check out Quizworks, because they're Australian for one. They're great biblical content too, and they're excellent at what they do. So Quizworks are just really good. They've really honed some of my skills over the years, and so they've been an excellent partner, and I'll continue to be pretty much one of their strongest advocates, which is great. So they're always worth checking out. And they run, depending what state you're in, they run puppetry courses and that kind of stuff. If you're in Adelaide, I can run puppetry courses, but it's always good to hear from other people. So there's just various things so to kind of come back to it, if you're starting out, know your story, know your script, in essence, kind of know where the character is going to say, know the kind of character you want to be. All characters are an extension of yourself. If they're crazy or not, they are an extension of yourself, whether you're an amazing actor or not. Because we tend to be volunteers, it's going to be an extension of yourself. And then do work out the actual craft of the puppet itself. So, yeah.
That's fantastic. Really, really good advice for anyone who wants to, improve those skills or even go into it vocationally and
muck around with it.
I'll definitely, the next time I'm doing puppetry, that mouth thing is going to be in the back of my mind so much.
That's the one that's the killer. The moving down. The two biggest parts of craft, kind of giving away some of my craft stuff at the moment, is mouth and eyes.
Yes.
Mouth and eyes. They are the two most important parts of the puppet, and really eyes more than mouth. Because it doesn't matter where the mouth is looking, but it does matter where the eyes are looking.
Yes.
Because if the eyes aren't looking at the thing that the puppet is wanting to draw attention to, everyone looks up.
And that's particularly hard when your head is down behind a puppet stage and you're sort of only vaguely aware of where the person is.
Yeah. So the puppet theaters where you can stand in it and look through the curtain. Those puppet theaters are free. The design is online. They are great because you can get an idea. Your eyes can help see where your own puppet is looking. If you cannot see your puppet, the way the Sesame Street and the Jim Henson Company do it, they're all wearing monitors. They can see their puppet in every situation. Wow. They can see where the puppet is looking. Big Bird had it built inside the costume. So the person could have walked around with a tiny TV strapped to their chest while his arm was miles above his head, and could see wherever he was going through this monitor. It was amazing.
And hopefully not watching another show at the same time.
Yes, that is our problem, isn't it? I know what I'm doing here, but down here I'm watching Netflix. You know?
I'm just thinking that I struggle doing things in the mirror. I'm just imagining trying to watch yourself walking around on a mirror on a camera where you're actually seeing yourself from out here.
Yeah. And you've got to make sure if you can see a monitor, you've got to make sure it's mirrored. Otherwise, you're going to mess with your head something chronic.
Right.
Because if it's not mirrored, then your brain just can't compute. So
it's like the Matrix almost. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The last question people always ask me is where to get puppets from.
Yeah.
Etsy is your friend. But projectpuppet.com is the best place to get puppet patterns that you can make. The best puppet is one you can make.
I have a family member who tends to take plush toys and convert them into a puppet.
Absolutely. Go to op shops and look for toys that have an open mouth already.
Yeah.
That is the cheapest way. Absolute cheapest way. If you have to, the cheapest puppet I ever bought, which I couldn't use it publicly because it was Donkey from Shrek, but his mouth was already open and he was just filled with stuffing. So all I had to do was cut his belly and he was right to go. Easiest puppet I've ever converted.
Except for the sock with googly eyes.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to make sure they have eyes, make sure they have a mouth, and if it's open, op shops are your friend. But then you've got to make sure you can get your hand through its neck, hand through its back. If the stuffing comes out, when the stuffing comes out, does that change the form of its body? All that kind of stuff. Op shops make them, and then there's plenty of places online. You just got to know how to find them. But Etsy's a good place to start.
Yes.
So there's plenty of people on there. And then there's a lot of folk menace. They're tiny puppets, monster puppets, people puppets. You can those are good because they're available dime a dozen. They're catalog puppets. As soon as you go one-offs, you're adding a couple of $100 to thousands of dollars for custom-made puppets. But yeah, check out Luna's Puppets. That's a happy place.
I am going to check it out, even though I'm sure I won't be able to afford one. I might have a look.
It's the Rolls Royce of puppets, I imagine.
I have one. I saved up for so long.
Yeah.
Every industry has things that you look at and go, if money was no object, I would have that thing.
Exactly right. That's my thing.
Oh, look, thank you so much, Stephen. It's been, amazing for us to hear, and really beneficial. And I think a lot of people who are involved in churches who are involved in the creative arts are going to get a lot out of, hearing what you've said. And it's been very instructional as well in many ways. I feel like almost I've been to puppet school, which is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
Yeah. So, again, just thank you so much. We'll definitely keep you in our prayers as well for your ministry opportunities coming forward, and to keep using your gifts and your skills and talents to share about Jesus with the world. And probably only appropriate that we end with, if there's anything you want to add or anything you want to show us from your box of mystery.
I'll show you.
We'd love to see
two different kinds. I'll show you two different kinds. So I'll show you the difference between a catalog and a custom puppet. So
okay,
I've got a catalog puppet. This is my friend Hamish, and the good thing about Hamish is he's very light. So you can see he's great. He's an arm rod puppet. So you can't. So he's a just light fur. Yeah. Light puppets. Light puppets are your friends. He's got legs, so you can hold him. Beautiful. And then because I can see where he's looking, I can see how he's reacting, and I can see where he's going and that kind of stuff. And you can see where he's hiding, and you can see. Yes. So one thing you want to look for when you're doing puppets, if they come on and he's talking to me and he's talking there, that doesn't work. He's got to be looking at me, looking at you, kind of working out what to do, looking at you, because it looks like then he's talking.
Yes.
If he's talking there, but if he's looking there and he's talking to you, hi guys, yeah, how you doing? No. He's got to be looking.
Yeah.
He's got to be looking at the camera and saying, hello, this is going to be fun.
And it's fascinating just watching you do that on screen there. The fact that if the puppet is looking at me and you're not, I start looking at him when I hear the voice.
It's like a filter.
This is a catalog puppet. You can get these anywhere, all over the world. Great way to start, cheapish way to start, which is good. So kind of a catalog puppet. The thing about catalog puppets is they're not unique. So if you're doing a show with a catalog puppet, there's every chance that person will say, I've seen that somewhere else.
I know you.
Yeah, I know you. I saw you at that other place I went to.
Yeah.
So in a similar way,
very good point.
Is kind of the Teddy style. You see these guys pretty much everywhere. Again, arm rod, and yeah. So as you can see, he's got a round face, which is so you can't do as much of this. Can't do much. You've got to do more. So keeping his eyes locked to a spot and then talking to him that he says the right thing. And it's all about it's all about little reactions. So they can kind of, if they're going crazy all the time, it's okay, but you want them to seem believable.
I find quite often with a puppet, when you get a new puppet, figuring out your little grab bag of tricks of what emotional things you can get the puppet to do is handy.
And look, puppets can do most things, which is really, really exciting. As you work out kind of the kind of puppets you want to work with, and it's good to have puppets which are kind of blank canvases. So this guy is a custom puppet, but he can kind of be anything I want him to be. So, there you go. His name is Benny.
Wow. Oh, wow. Look at the expression you can get.
You can do so much with him. Again, he's an arm rod puppet. Now you've got the ears can be distracting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can also have them.
Oh.
He's right. He's right on that line where he could be adorable and friendly, or he could be a raving psychopath.
Yes, that's right.
Are those table tennis balls? Are they?
Oh, probably.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I really like this one.
Going down the craft line. Yes.
I love this one.
Anything is doable. So this is the kind of puppet you would hold. He also works in a puppet stage. I can't hold him and not do it. So he can kind of be both. So that's starting to go down the unique line. And then let's take it up a gear. And this is where it gets fun. This. Oh, he's beautiful. I'll try not to drool as I use it, but this is the live hand puppet.
I can already tell this is going to be good. Look at that fur. Oh. Oh, wow. That's very Muppets-esque, isn't it? Wow.
Oh, wow. Those eyebrows are great.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is the joys of the live hand puppet.
Wow. Goodness me.
And then as you use it, they can have so much more fun and excitement and engagement. And then you can, excuse me, I need a drink.
Yeah. Cover the hand when you're embarrassed. You can pick your nose.
And then, yeah.
Wow.
And it's like,
yeah, there's a lot of expression in those eyes.
Yeah, so he's fully made. He's got a body.
Yep.
There, arms, everything.
Wow.
He looks a bit dopey. I haven't used him as much. He's brand new, so.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
I can see you taking him out of the case and just going, "Oh, we're going to have some fun
I'm
together."
having so much fun right now. So that's where you get that's starting to get more. That's custom. He's from Luna Puppets, and he occasionally has sales, but he only makes one-offs. So that one's he's got different patterns of, and there's similar ones to that. And then he's someone who's a puppet contractor. He's a puppet builder full time. So that's
Mission
where it
puppet
gets
builder.
fun. So that's kind of your three on a basic level, kind of catalog, basic, one of a kind. That one's technically not unique because there's other one. You could get him in different colors. You can get him in other ways, but the people who spend that money, there's not many of them. So you won't see that kind of puppet really much.
After that, you're talking Henson animatronics, and
after that, you're talking about being part of a studio. Like that's TV.
You need movie money.
So yeah, that's kind of where to get them from and how to do it and that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Oh, Stephen, thank you so much. It's been a huge privilege to have you here, and the Lord bless you in this ministry and moving forward with this. And I can only just see the excitement in the kids' eyes and even the adults' eyes as well, because there certainly would be in mine if I saw that orange thing come out and be involved in a ministry presentation. So
and some sassy 7-year-old getting the stare.
Oh yeah.
Are you listening? Yeah.
But yeah, like that eye mechanics. That's you're kind of doing it like this as you're doing this, and it's like everything just needs practice. So
Thank you so much, Stephen. It's been an honor, and thank you and for your time and for being available for Lochy and I.
No worries.
All right, cheers.